Your camera on and we're good to go.
Yo,
Yo, what's up, man? How you doing?
good. How are you?
Great. Thank you so much for coming on here today.
My pleasure, man. This is gonna be awesome.
Yes. Well, I got to say, first of all, like I was just saying as I was playing, it's so fun playing the game. Like I'm used to only getting mad playing video games since starting streaming, but to finally, like, thank you so much for having a game where it's like it's fun. It reminds you of what it's like to play a video game, having fun.
Uh-huh.
It is awesome.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, man.
Very
I'm
cool.
rocking the shirt today.
I saw that.
Yeah, and actually my necklace matches. And this is from Johan from Monomarth's jewelry company. And it matches. I love it.
It's badass.
Yeah, man. Well, I always like to start from the beginning when I chat to friends here. How did you get into what you do? Like, where did you first start loving video games or loving story creating or loving imagery creating, all that stuff?
Oh boy. It was the arcades.
Yeah.
Really way back in the day. I can remember saving my allowance for weeks to go to the arcades and just spend money in the arcades all day long, rolls of quarters, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to date myself. One year I got an Atari 2600 for my birthday.
Dang. That's awesome.
And that just completely changed things.
Yeah.
For me, right? Like I had games in my house. I could play whenever I wanted to. I didn't have to keep spending money on all of that stuff. Like it was amazing. And it just kind of went from there. And games have just always been a passion for me. And I actually didn't know this was a real job back in the day. Like
Yeah.
I got in by testing and completely by accident. Completely by accident. I was in school, in college. I thought I was going to be, I wanted to be a teaching pro, a golf teaching pro. That's what I wanted to do. I was between semesters, and one of my buddies got a job testing games at EA. And I was like, that's bullshit. Like, there's no way. That's not a real thing. And he's like, no, it is. And he got me in there, and I was hooked ever since. And it's been 26 years.
That's amazing. Which EA headquarters was that you were at?
It was in the Burnaby campus, so in Vancouver.
Okay, cool. Because we've got one right by me, surprisingly, like 15 minutes from here. That's why I was curious. I didn't know how many there were.
Now, there's a bunch.
When you were first getting into the games, I think it was actually Hugo from Doom who mentioned like getting into Atari, because Atari was like just before, like I got into games on NES. I think he mentioned he's like, I look at these covers and it's this incredible illustration. I get in the graphics and be like, all right, this is a little bit different. But I guess that was the peak technology at the time. So what were some of those early games that got you into like, all right, I'm really into this imagery, really into what's going on here?
Oh boy. Well, the one that really hooked me, it was actually not until the Super NES.
Yeah, that was a game changer for me.
That was for me, playing Mario on that for the very first time. But really Final Fantasy.
Yes, me too.
Getting in there, like Final Fantasy, I guess it's 3 here, but it was, I think, 6 in Japan, or that just changed my life, and storytelling and cool characters. Like that was the thing for me. And then ever since then, I've been fascinated with stories and building my characters and, that kind of RPG style of thing. And then the internet hit, and then you could play those kinds of games online with your friends, and it just another completely life-changing thing.
That's amazing. Did you play a lot of the Final Fantasies, or was it mainly just?
I have. Okay. Yeah, I've played all of them all the way through. So
what's your, like, how would you order them top 3? Because I've got my top 3 ready for you.
Oh,
it's tough. Mine's 7, 6, and 4.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. So I will say 10 is probably my third. I would say probably 2 would be my second, and then 3 or 6 or whatever you want to call it is my number 1. Like Kefka is the best villain ever.
Kefka's amazing, man. 6 and 4. Like I always remember Sabin's cabin and having to like hunt for fish by the cabin as he's like getting better, or you have to like find Gao in that desert, and you just have to keep doing fights until you finally see them. I remember on Final Fantasy 4/2, I was stuck. I think it was like to find the Black Chocobo or something like that. And I remember that's back when Nintendo had a hotline. You call, and it was like $1 by the minute for tips. So I called them like, where the hell's the Black Chocobo? And they'd like talk you through. I can't believe there was stuff like that, like a hotline for game tips. I know,
it's unbelievable.
It's unbelievable. Nuts. It's nuts. I used to actually collect, I still have them. I'd collect every single Final Fantasy strategy guide as well. Because like that's one of the things where I was scared about jumping back into RPGs or having, like I said, I've never played an MMORPG before. Is I'm such a completionist. I want to finish everything and get absolutely everything the right way you're supposed to do it, which is kind of the way I do everything. Like I want to do it the right way. And once I complete things, then I can play. and improvise.
It's hard to do in an MMO. Just saying.
Yes, it is. But I'm really happy to hear you say 6 and 4, because those two, it's so amazing how they marry the medieval look with a little bit of that steampunk. And I think it's just the right amount. Like 7 is like pushing the technology, and I feel like any more than that, that's why my next favorite would have been 9. Like for the newer stuff, like 8. I played 10 a lot. 8 I never finished, but 9 I liked a lot because it reminded me of like 4 and 6.
Yeah, the sphere grid in 10 just ate my life. Like I remapped everything on there, perfected it out. That's like amazing. I was one of those types of guys. Yeah, so
that's amazing. So, what were some of the first gigs you got on your way into where you're at now? Like, how did you kind of work your way around?
So I tested games for 7 years, and then I moved into production. So I was a producer, managing schedules, doing that kind of stuff. And then when I came here, and this was 2005, so I got a job as the tech producer on Oblivion.
That's awesome.
So I was one of the tech producers on Oblivion, and I just kind of moved into design from there. And on ESO, I have been a producer. I have been the lead dungeon designer. I've been the lead content designer. So all the base game content was me and my teams working on all the stories and the zones and things like that. And then I've been the creative director on ESO since launch. So
that's amazing.
It's been a ride.
That's amazing. Now, can you let us know like what the creative director does at like, because like I've always been curious, because like so many different terms, like producer, creative director for like music and film, it's so different than games.
Right.
But what do you do there?
So my role is basically I am responsible for all of the stuff that goes into the game.
Wow.
So I work with all the teams, and I'm not the one that does all the work, but I work with the teams to make sure the things that go into the game meet a certain quality level, meet lore standards, and fit kind of within the world of Elder Scrolls, and is something that our player base is going to love. Right?
Yeah.
And so I have to kind of be in tune with all of those things.
That's amazing.
And it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
There's a lot of stuff that goes on. But I love it. Like I love every day is a new thing. It's a new challenge. There's always some kind of either problem to solve or cool new person to talk to. Like it's awesome. Love it.
That's amazing. Yeah, because like even when I'm listening to the dialogue and reading the stories of the game, the lore is so intense and it goes so far in. Like, what are some of the things? Do you fully come up with everything on your own? Obviously, I mean, it's its own thing that exists only in ESO. But what inspires you for that? Is it other languages, other cultures, specific eras in time? Like, where do you pull those wells of inspiration from?
All of the above.
Yeah.
Right. Like we have a super talented team that loves just the lore, loves gaming in general, and so the inspiration comes from everywhere. It comes from songs, comes from books, comes from movies, sports. Like it just kind of comes all over, and then we work with them to turn it into something that is almost magic.
That's really cool.
The world is living and breathing, and you're just starting now to kind of explore it in a little bit, and you can see like they're real people in the world.
Yeah,
and they all kind of have their own beliefs. And in ESO and in Elder Scrolls in general, there isn't kind of this single source of truth. The stories are told through the people that live in the world. And so there's going to be conflicting reports of things and whatnot. And it's just so much fun to be a part of.
That's so amazing. Even just that last interaction I was having before we jumped on, it felt like right now. It's like, all right, there's a guy who's being radicalized by this group. And then it's like, damn, I love that stuff. And what's so cool to hear you say, like, it's from everything. That's the same way people were asking me the other day about, like, how do you guys come up with songs? It's like, it's from everything. It's like from feeling good. Like, one of the stories I always cite is sitting on a park bench in Copenhagen, looking at a lake and just coming up with this really cool, dark, sinister metal riff because it's in a good mood. And there's all these different things, different culture. Like, there's that old Scandinavian vibe in the ground and it's coming up through you. But what's so cool is, like, I've always wanted our music, when you listen to it, to picture and to be able to live in the worlds of what you're making. Mm-hmm. So that's so cool for me to be able to, like, wow, this is that world that I saw in my head when I was making this song, and I get to walk around in this. How big is the team that you've got around you specifically for what you do? Because that is so much knowledge and database you have to remember and write down and create. Like, what do you do? Is it just you? Is it a couple others that help with that?
So we have a pretty big team. And like I said earlier, it's not just me. Like I have on the story side and the content side of things, There is a lead content designer who's responsible for the content teams. I have a lead writer. We have a lore master, and those are the guys that I generally work with on a regular basis, where we just kind of dig into the framework, right? Like I just kind of help set the framework, the box, so to speak, for the teams to work in, and then the teams go off and they just create. And like it's amazing to see, hey, here's an idea, or here's a theme, or a lot of times it's just a word that helps kind of set the tone. So for example, like when we did Elsewhere, which was 2 chapters ago, it was the tone, the word was revenge. And so it was revenge and dragons. And so that kind of helped frame the entire conversation throughout the entire year for all of the teams, is to feel around that word. And it's kind of funny when you say feel around the word, but it sets that tone. And then Greymore was Gothic. And so you go into Greymore and it's this dark, kind of oppressive Gothic feel throughout the entire year. And that helps set a lot of the frameworks for the teams.
Yeah, man, it's so fun. It's like I've always known my job is fun, but like to hear the job that you guys get to do is to create this world you get to play in and enjoy, and like that's the way we think of songs, but it's being able to live within the song. Just like I was saying on the campaign up to this, when people were talking about, hey, the partnership between ESO, ZeniMax, Bethesda, and Trivium. And I was like, when you listen to Trivium, like that's the stuff I picture when I want to listen to metal. I want to be in those worlds. That's why, I always talk about being so inspired by Scandinavian lore. And this is your Mungundir eating his own tail from Ragnarok. That's why I was obsessed with Skyrim. Like that was a whole couple of tours for me, just nonstop Skyrim. And it's just so exciting. So that wasn't even really a question. It's just a thanks. Like as a metalhead, like I love this stuff so much.
It's funny too, where you're fascinated about our jobs, but I am fascinated about yours. And kind of, it's a different world. It's things that I don't even really think about. And to especially with you and Trivium, seeing just the accessibility that you give your fans. Like you're always streaming. I've been lurking for a long time now, and just having that access to the bands. Like last night I watched the show.
Thanks,
and it was awesome, right? Like it was so cool to see like the initial sound checks, and then the warm-ups in the green room where you just jamming out with the guys, and then the show. But you do more than that. You do like you try to give people access to you and your vocal warm-ups. You're jamming on your songs, messing around with new songs. You're going into your hangar and showing the jam sessions there. Like it's so cool to see that. And for me, it's just eye-opening, because it's like a black box to me.
Likewise.
It's a completely different realm of work. But it sounds like there are some similarities, which is really, really cool.
Absolutely, especially the creative process. And it's so cool for me because like I have been in love with games longer than music. I was playing Mario 1 at like 4 or 5 years old. So I've just been obsessed ever since. And Final Fantasy, I'm so happy to hear it was such a big part of your life. Like I am a full-blown otaku of that game. Like I've got 1 to 3 copies of every game ever, every edition. I have all the toys from Japan. Like every time we'd go over there, I'd buy all the toys in Square Enix shop, bring them home in luggage bags. I've got the limited edition soft drink, the posters, the strategy guides. Like I said, the movie for years, our intro and outro were from the Advent Children film. The intro was Divination when they fight Bahamut, and then the outro was Sephiroth's theme. I mean, we're like full blown.
You're hardcore, yeah.
Yes. So like, like to be able to, like Skyrim and Oblivion were the last 2 that I played. So to be able to jump in now, and now I'm like, I'm feeling really obsessed. Like I'm feeling like I'm loving this. And what's been interesting for me getting into streaming and gaming is meeting other streamers, meeting other gamers. And I always just assumed, because the worlds are so similar in which the best games are, RPGs, Doom, like those kinds of vibes, I've always felt it's so metal. But to meet all these streamers and gamers, they don't really know the genre. It's been like, wait a second, you play a game that looks like ESO and you don't know what metal is. Like, I feel like those, like Amon Amarth, Behemoth, those are the soundtracks to ESO, in my opinion, and plus the symphonies. It's just really, really fun. I would love to be able to someday come down. I know it's the only thing I have in my head is that TV show Mythic Quest. That's the only thing I can picture of how a game studio is. And I don't know if it's accurate at all.
It's totally not.
Yeah, I figured. Yeah. Because it just seems like so fun. I'd love to someday come down there and just watch how it's done, but it's a little bit different. I guess you can't see it in a day. It's like how we make a song. It could take months. It could take
You're
a year.
right.
Phalanx is something that we've had since 2009 that we wrote for our most,
Really?
yes, for our two like fan favorites people say is the best is Ascendancy and Shogun. And Shogun is one that was heavily inspired by Greek mythology, Japanese history, but in which the way that you do it is that we take these vibes that feel like it's within this world and tell our own story. Into the Mouth of Hell We March, Kiichichaos, Shogun, these very epic songs. I just picture storytelling like the games that you create are, and I make lyrics to that. So I almost want people to fill in the holes with what they see in their head as they listen. So and that's why it's like, man, it's right here, and it's been a childhood dream of mine to this. This is definitely like one of the accomplishments to be able to combine, but to be able to be in a game and score it completely from ground up. Now I know Brad is perfect. Brad is the ESO guy. His stuff is unbelievable. But hopefully someday I can do that because I know what visuals should sound like, and I feel like you all, I guess this isn't a question, I'm just kind of gushing, like I'm just very, very stoked. All of us are so honored, and when we're able to do these two things, so same with like the Phalanx tells this story in which, like, I feel like the only other way we could really ever show it would be a video game, and it's not really something you can like explain in that way. Yeah, it's just it's really cool. Sorry, that wasn't a question either, but
I think it's amazing. You know, when you first sent us that video, you know, the Phalanx video where all the CGI was cut into it, I was like, holy shit, this is the year. Like, Dagon is metal.
Yep.
Right? Like he is metal. The Deadlands is that. And then to see how you all kind of took that song and put it together and then put the CGI in there, I thought it was perfect.
Thanks, man.
Like, it's so good, and I've literally listened to it on loop for like 3 weeks, and you only actually released it for man. It's what, a week old now at this point, technically. So like it's I love it. It's
That's
so good.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's those two are meant to go together. I feel like video games should be classical music and metal, and really nothing else fits. And but it is cool to see that there are some guys out there like Shroud. He's a huge metalhead. Trivium's his favorite band. But then like I'm good friends with Dakota's. He'd never really heard metal before us, and I had to introduce him to metal. And it's just always interesting to see that because I've always felt gaming and metal are for the underdogs. We're the people that like we're a little bit different, into a little bit different things, and kind of we needed this. Like the community within video games, the community within ESO, the community within metal and Trivium. It's so similar, and it's so built upon what unites us and what we have in common while being so different, and I really love that. Now, one thing we didn't cover: where were you from originally? You mentioned Canada a little bit.
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Vancouver, BC.
Awesome.
So I'm Canadian.
Awesome.
I am a transplant into the States. My wife is American, so that's how I got down here.
I love the food in Vancouver. I don't know how often you go back, but
I haven't been back in probably 4 years now.
Yeah.
My mom still lives on Vancouver Island. My sister lives in Montreal, but she's moving back to Vancouver this year. So I will probably spend more time over there. But yeah, I miss it. It's gorgeous.
The food in Montreal rules too. But what I've always said about Vancouver, and correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know why this is a thing just there. I always say in Vancouver they've got mutant sushi. Like it's gigantic. Like everything is like twice as big. It's so cool. Why is that a thing there? Like, do you have any idea?
I don't know. I mean, I know it's a lot easier to get fish over there. Like the first time I brought my wife to Vancouver, we just went essentially to the beach, to the docks, and there's all kinds of fishing boats right off the docks, and you get this amazing fish and chips. Damn, just super fresh right off the boat. Like it's amazing.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
I'm assuming I could tell already that you're a food guy as well.
I like food.
Yes.
I have problems with food.
Me too.
But I like food.
Yes, that is food, video games, and music. Food, video games, and metal are like the things for me, and particularly games of the realm of what ESO and Final Fantasy do. Like, and I love that so much. Has there ever been anything that's been kind of like a Japanese vibed thing within the ESO universe or the ES universe?
Yeah, I think the Akavir is probably the closest to that in the lore. You know, they're kind of samurai-esque inspired. So, you know, we've never really shown what they look like, but there are definitely some of those vibes in the lore, like when you're reading the books and seeing that kind of stuff.
That's really cool. If you ever want to go into a world like that, I I do have a side project, Ibaraki. It's all Japanese lore. So that's something I realized that never existed. Like no one's ever tapped into the Japanese gods, goddesses, monsters, all this stuff. So I've learned about it extensively, and I made a project that has like Japanese instruments. I sing a little bit in Japanese. I'm half Japanese. I'm from Iwakuni originally. And it goes into all of this stuff. And while I'm wandering around in Vanderfeld, like I picture this. Like there could be a whole nother kind of ancient Japanese looking world with kind of Japanese beasts and monsters. Like I can picture that. So if you ever have that idea, that'd be a fun thing to riff on. Yeah, that'd be really fun.
I mean, I love that kind of stuff. So just seeing it would be cool. So I would love to go through that.
Absolutely. Favorite meal of all time? I know that was a quick jump. That was a jump back into it.
Favorite meal of all time.
It could be singular. It could be a cuisine, but maybe a singular thing.
If I have to pick, probably salmon sushi, nigiri.
Hell yes.
Like that's probably like, I love my pizzas. I love my carbs, but probably salmon with a little soy and wasabi mixed on there.
Yes. If I had to pick like my favorite thing, it actually is salmon as well. But it's Japanese breakfast. It's rice and like oven broiled or grilled salmon with soy sauce. That's like,
okay.
My mom made that for me every day for breakfast, and I thought that's what everyone ate because that's what I ate. I remember being in elementary school, and everyone was like, "Oh," they were talking about what'd you have for breakfast, and I was the first person they asked, like, "Hey, Matt, what'd you have for breakfast?" I was like, "Salmon and rice, like you guys like every day." They're like, "Wait, what?" They're like, "That's disgusting. Why would you do that?" And I think that was one of those moments where I started realizing, like, "Oh, I'm doing something different. I want to know what everyone else's different is." I mean, first I was a little embarrassed, but then I wanted to start digging out and going further and seeing what else there was in the world.
That's awesome. Wow.
It's
that's amazing.
Yes. When you are feeling like, so when it's time for you to be creative, when it's time for you to think of these worlds and paint these things and come up with everything and anything that you come up with, do you prefer to have it happen during a set time? Like, hey, I'm going to come up with X amount of story, X amount of lore, X amount of pieces today. Or does it just come to you randomly and you try to capture that?
It definitely comes to me randomly in just random spots. And so I take notes. I have a notebook next to my keyboard pretty much everywhere I sit. And then I also take notes on my phone. And I have mails that I just send myself and keep in my drafts forever. And I've had a mail that it's been ongoing for 10 years now.
That's
just
amazing.
With like ideas and things. And I always look back to those.
That's awesome. That is the exact same way that I do it. Like I find that if I have to sit there for writing time, it doesn't work for Trivium or Ibaraki. It'll work for other things. Like I don't know what that is, why that is. Same thing like when I was presented with the Bard songs, like, hey Matt, just do an acoustic cover. And I heard it, and as soon as I heard it, I was like, no, I hear the metal version right now. And that thing just like spilled out. So when it's something that's not Trivium or Ibaraki, it's easy and quick. But when it's Trivium or Ibaraki, I cannot sit and force a time. But speaking of notes, I've got all these different notepad things, and my freaking lists just keep going, and I'll just pull from little different bits. So that's really cool to hear that, because I feel like that's the thing that everyone listening and everyone who wants to be a creative or who is a creative or who wants to make things, like there really is something, that lightning in a bottle.
Yeah.
When something feels good, just capture that moment right away. And
if you can, just keep going, right? Like you get that idea, in that moment, if you can stop and spend some time and write it all out and just keep riffing on that, it's amazing how much time you just lose in that moment, but B, how amazing whatever that thing is that you're working on turns out. Mm-hmm. I have definitely found where I've had, that inspiration, and I just take a note and then I come back to it a day or 2 or 5 days later. I'm like, what the hell was I thinking? Like, I don't have that inspiration anymore. I don't have that moment anymore. And so I've learned that when I get that kind of creative jolt, to just go and do as much as I can until it's kind of all out.
That's awesome. What are some of the things that you love to do on the side? Like gaming is a side. I'm pretty sure you're going to be similar with like work/hobby that you love, but what are some of the things that you do to unwind or that make you feel creative or that let you unplug?
So games obviously is a big part of my life. But I love to golf. Mm-hmm. So that's the other side of things, to get out. And then the other creative outlet that I have is I like to do woodworking.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so I make tables and chairs and all kinds of things, cutting boards, and it lets me scratch that creative side of my brain, but lets me forget about work because it's a totally different medium.
That's amazing.
And yeah, I love it. It's so much fun.
Do you Instagram this? Do you Twitch this?
I tweeter it.
Yeah.
So
I could picture the Instagram, like that would be super interesting for everyone to see, like your woodworking.
yeah,
That'd be really cool.
Instagram is a terrifying beast for me.
Yeah.
But I've just started learning, and it's funny. I've been on Twitter since 2016, but I'm just starting to kind of learn about it and how it works. And so yeah, I post all kinds of pictures of my woodworking stuff and whatnot. So
That's so
it's
cool.
fun.
My
It's
wife's been
fun.
really wanting to get into woodworking. She's never tried it, never attempted it, but she's like, I want to do this. Like she just went back working for herself. And yeah, I might need to pick your brain a little bit about that. Like, hey, what do
Absolutely.
we need? How
Yep.
dangerous is this? Because that's one of the things I worry about.
It can be dangerous.
I can
I mean, you're
imagine.
using sharp tools, and
Yeah.
if you're using the, like a table saw or something like that, if you're not paying attention, you can cut your fingers off for sure. Really
Damn.
easy. Yep,
Damn.
really easy.
Music. What do you listen to when you're doing things? When you're woodworking? When you're writing stories? Like, what is it usually?
It's kind of almost embarrassing because I have this really weird eclectic kind of taste in music. It really, as long as there's strong vocals or strong beat, or ideally both, I listen to it. So my playlists range from like Sarah Brightman to Eminem to NoFX to Pentakill and Trivium, right? Like it just kind of runs this really wild mix. I've got some Taylor Swift in there,
We always
Shania
our
Twain.
kids love the last three Taylor Swifts. They absolutely love them. The last three are amazing. Like
Yeah, and
Evermore, Lover, and what's the other one? Folklore.
right.
Those three are amazing. Amazing.
And it just runs the gambit, and it kind of depends on what I want to do as well. So
Yeah.
if I'm in the gym and I'm doing some cardio stuff, it's definitely EDM, stuff like that, right? If I'm lifting, then it's metal because I want that anger, I want that that vibe to kind of help push me through things. And then sometimes it's classical music, and it's really weird. I listen to everything, but
That's really cool. I'm always about pairing the mood of what I'm doing with music. So I've been doing yoga since like 2010, Ashtanga yoga. When I'm doing yoga, it's like Renaissance lute music. It's like bard songs. It's things like that. That's why
okay.
when I started digging into like Brad's music, I was like, this is so great because this is the stuff I always want to listen to when I'm doing chill things. I'm doing yoga or doing food prep or something like that. It's classical music. It's lute stuff. It's or Japanese traditional, that kind of stuff I've been getting into a lot lately. But steel mace, jujitsu, Muay Thai, all that stuff that I do. I do a lot of martial arts. It's always heavy stuff, metal, just like super heavy. But when I'm creative, I actually cannot listen to things with vocals. You mentioned vocals, and that's what I thought was really interesting. Like if I'm writing lyrics or I'm trying to do something, or back when I used to do food blog and stuff like that, I cannot have vocals. It has to be instrumental, or like my brain, like maybe it's ADD. Like I'll start to like wander off and get stuck.
Okay. Yeah.
But yes.
Yeah, I think I have my wife definitely tells me I have a talent of being able to tune things out when I don't need it. And so too. I guess that works for me. And I think I focus more on the beat, right, than anything else. But yeah, music is an amazing thing. I wish I was talented enough to do it.
Dude, I could teach you. I could teach anyone to play guitar. I taught my jiu-jitsu sensei who couldn't even hold a guitar, and now he's fantastic.
Really? Wow.
I sent Hugo from Doom some guitar lessons. I actually made him a whole YouTube series of like how to start up. So I'll send you that. Yeah, I'll send you that. Yeah, because that's some key stuff. Like anyone can learn, especially what you're doing. You could do this, and then you could start like painting with that. You could start like creating little songs, and I think it'd be wild. Fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
My last question, because I've been asked about this, I only learned what this is a couple years ago. Someone was talking about flow state, when everything becomes completely quiet and you're such perfectly attuned to challenge and fun all at the same level, where everything is quiet and you lose track of time. And someone else was, one of my good friends from school was writing a book about this Japanese concept of ma, which is silence. It's the concept of silence and how we don't really have it. And he told me about this. It blew my mind when he told me about that. When you are creating stories, do you find yourself in that space where you lose space and time, where you're in that flow state, and what other things do that for you?
Oh, yeah,
it's almost this meditative trance where you're like, oh wow, that was great. Where am I?
Right. So video games actually do that to me for sure, right? Where you're so focused in on either a story or learning a new mechanic or something along those lines that next thing you look down and it's 7 hours later and you're like, what happened, right? That definitely happens when creating stories or designing new features or things like that. I, especially now that we have been working from home for as long as we have been, I have spent many a night just kind of at my keyboard reviewing things, or, writing up, creative briefs and things like that. And you just lose that track of time. Suddenly it's 10 hours and I haven't gotten up.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten anything to drink, or I forgot to eat because I was doing things. Right. And so definitely believe in that concept. Right. And I've experienced it, and it happens.
I love it.
Across the board.
Yep.
Right. Through anything.
Yep. It's hard to find, like, sometimes during shows it'll be just right. But like last night, for example, I was there, and then like my voice started feeling weird. Then I started thinking about it, and I fall completely out of it. And I almost had to bring myself back into that space. But I definitely get it from games. And the problem, I started losing it because I was talking about FPS. FPS were the first games I really started streaming with. Mm-hmm. You run into smurfing, you run into like all these things. Like, I don't want to fight people below that are too easy, and I don't want to fight people that are impossible. I like my level. Same with jiu-jitsu. Like jiu-jitsu, I've always only paired with people my level or much higher, and I find that jiu-jitsu gives me that flow state, or that quiet, that peace, that meditative thing. And same with games, and I've been really feeling that with ESO. Awesome. And I'm really happy to have that. Awesome. But I'm glad to hear so many parallels between the two of what we do, because it's very similar to what we're doing. We're creating these new worlds. But yours, you actually get to walk into these worlds through games, which is really fun. But my man, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to chat. Thank you so much for the incredible game. Thank you for everything you guys are doing. I'm stoked. Anytime you ever need a metal cover or something, or if there's like a metal group of bandits playing something that Brad wrote that I could do the screaming or some voice acting or whatever the heck you need, it's amazing. It's been an honor, and cool. I look forward to doing more covers of you guys' stuff and diving more into the world.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this too, by the way. Heck and yes. You kind of hinted at it earlier, but anytime you are in town, hit me up, and we'll find a way to get you in the studio and kind of have a tour and stuff like that. I think it'd be really cool.
Amazing.
Yeah,
awesome.
Really cool.
Awesome, my friend. Thank you so much for everything. And if you guys ever need anything from Trivium or me, we're always down.
Cool, man.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
Take care, dude. Later.